Having just accomplished our recent review of the beta of Tom Clancy's The Division, we here at AGN felt ourselves ready to tackle yet another post-apocalyptic shooter to further satiate our desire to save our imperiled corner of the globe. Our expectations were, needless to say, somewhat shattered, and unfortunately not in the way we had envisioned. Crikey sweet baby Jesus in a handbasket, this game has issues. So let's get started on the breakdown. Developmental issues plagued this title from the start. If anyone recalls, THQ, the Saints Row and Red Faction developer, initially released Homefront in March of 2011 to less than rave reviews. This was the beginning of the end, and in January of 2013, THQ was liquidated by US bankruptcy court. At this point, Crytek, best known for the Far Cry series, Crysis, and the CryEngine, picked up the rights to the Homefront franchise. Unfortunately, trouble followed. Crytek reported in 2014 that it had trouble making payroll and bonuses for Crytek UK and Crytek USA staff. Consequently, after a transitional period, Crytek UK staff and the franchise of Homefront were sold to the Koch Media empire to be developed under Deep Silver Dumbbuster Studios. Is your head spinning yet? It should be. This game has been in development for over 5 years, yet what we played yesterday honestly looked like a student project. Yes, it was a beta, we know, but this is more akin to an alpha. If we're to be particularly honest, it had the potential to be so much more than it was. There are some ideas in it we really wanted to love. Unfortunately, they just never came into fruition and became lost in even the most elementary of design elements that should have been delivered upon, but were wrecked more horribly than a Cowboys game season. The beta consisted of having you and up to 3 teammates play a resistance squad of American guerrilla fighters out to make a mess of the local Nork Horde, the North Korean People's Army that have been enforcing a military occupation on the USA ever since it invaded back during the original Homefront game. No, we're not talking about the 2012 reboot of the 1980s Red Dawn. Although Homefront may have fared better had Chris Hemsworth been in it, this game takes place in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Only there is no love left here for the KPA, and you and your team are out to show them how unwanted they really are. I find it somewhat amusing that the game developers seem to employ a comically racist term for the North Koreans, calling the soldiers Norks. Not sure if they are aware of the Urban Dictionary's definition for the word, being, well, rough anal sex usually without lube, or in the Australian English parlance, Norks being the slang word for female breast. Whether they knew this or not, the implications are still pretty hilarious. Out of the gate, character creation is limited, but that's to be expected in a beta. Missions are also limited to a few hit-and-run guerrilla warfare strikes, and new weapons and gear can only be acquired by earning money in missions to spend on jackpot-style crates that award random gear and weapons. Skill points too are earned by all sorts of tasks undertaken in missions and can be spent on skill upgrades. You can loot fallen KPA troops and small stashes for items that allow you to craft IED-type devices or hacks to deploy in the game. We like the looting crafting idea, but any optimism for this mechanic was promptly sunk by the game's inability to get even the most rudimentary shooter mechanics right. You'd honestly think that these guys had paid no attention to any previous next-gen first-person shooter game, including the original Homefront. The game felt clunky and overly cumbersome. Moving your weapon from left to right and left again could not even be carried out in a fluid motion. Sprinting, a most basic component of any military shooter, was arduous and failed to activate reliably when needed. Climbing was very hit and miss, thereby forcing you to use ramps or scaffolding in order to ascend to the rooftops of buildings for a sniping perch. A climb which usually resulted in frustration, being as the aim assist is made out of junkyard scraps and teenage dreams. Another weird aspect we noticed was that the sensitivity seemed to increase when aiming down sights, which made us at times wish for a feature allowing you to Kurt Cobain yourself out of sheer exasperation. But even then, I doubt the aim assist would be in your side. Enemy troops appeared on the fly and would even spawn and despawn directly in front of you, only to respawn behind you while still firing on your position. Hit markers were unreliable at best, thereby forcing multiple shots to center mass as opposed to going for headshots that could down KPA troops faster, though Through most parts of the game, I honestly felt like the game was just satirizing itself. So let's get right into our rating system that we've been doing here with every game, and so far for the graphics, I'm going to give it a C-. A C-. The art of this game had potential, we'll give it that, but the whole thing seemed half-baked and not fully rendered to the level that we know even the older CryGen 3 is capable of. Granted, again, it's a beta, we know, but glitches crept into every environment and aspect of this game, and the only pleasant surprise we had through our playthrough was that no one fell through the maps. Interactivity with the game elements such as looting fallen soldiers, clambering over ledges, and even walking up ramps was sketchy from time to time. The character models had not changed much from the previous game in the series. RoboCop-esque KPA troopers, anyone? And even the textures lacked originality. They seemed like leftover Hollywood stock footage B-roll films refused to use up during their last Sharknado shoot. We expect more when the game is released, but we quietly have to wonder if Dambuster Studios is even staffed at this point with anyone who is remotely familiar with expertly running the CryEngine platform. It would be a travesty for this game to come to market in its current shape, as simply nothing stands out to set it apart. Let's get next into the GUI controls. For the graphical user interface and controls, we give this a D+. Although default control layout was much akin to other FPS games, that is where the similarity ended. Weapon modding had to be done on the fly in the game, and it was one of the more original aspects of the game. Being able to see your resistance fighter place attachments on their weapon without going into a menu screen was somewhat effective, and even had a pretty cool looking animation. ADS was again spotty and even terrifying at times, resulting in many missed shots that expended your all too precious ammo reserves. Many times, our team would run completely out of primary ammo and pistol ammo, forcing us to get off mission or wander away from the team to find a crate before our next engagement. Aiming became no better even after adjusting stick sensitivity. Weapon swapping only resulted in a minor increase of sprint speed when sprinting even worked at all. This is simply lazy programming, as the code for controller interface already comes built into the CryEngine itself. Everything from shooting to pancake making should already be in there for tweaking. While we're on this, the maps may indeed be open, but the missions are far from free roam. It feels like the game is played on rails, being as waypoints guide you from mission checkpoint to mission checkpoint, and you don't dare separate from your team. Enemies will spawn in strength to herd you back towards the main fight, or overwhelm you if you try to make a stand at it alone. The next thing we're going to get into rating is the PvE gameplay. So far, we're going to give this unrated for the story campaign, and for the co-op mode, I'm actually going to go ahead and give this a B. Without access to a true campaign single-player story mode, if this game will even have one, we were unable to rate this aspect at this time. We can only hope that the voice acting and cutscenes in the final release will give us a bit of story to go on and get us emotionally invested in our characters, or even any number of NPCs they could populate the game with. As it stands right now, you're just another meat suit in a long line of resistance fighters, all of whom share the same story of individual insignificance. Cooperative mode, on the other hand, does feel well grounded and seems to work when players communicate well and choose their tactics accordingly. This is yet another game where the Call of Duty style of run and gunning is simply not an acceptable tactical choice, and that truly raises the grade in our book. As we've stated before, we like games that require a bit of thought and pre-planning before jumping in with guns blazing. The fact that the enemy forces are better equipped and more numerous than your team does play well into the notion that you're a ragtag group of former civilians formed up to take on a well-organized military occupation. Again, though, there is no life throughout the maps. No lines of hungry civilians looking for food or laborers going about laboring. No one freaks and runs when the bullets start flying, and you can't even spook a stray cat out of the garbage can as you run past. These maps are dead for all intents and purposes. Enemy troops do seem a bit bullet spongy, but we feel that this is more an issue with hit markers and ADS controls than the actual damage laid out from your weapons. We cannot overemphasize enough that this must be addressed in full before the game launched to market. As far as the PvP, we're going to make that unrated for now, because as far as we know and we have researched, there will be no PvP aspect to this game, which in retrospect The time saved not having to deal with this mode should have been employed by the devs to further concentrate on and refine the aspects of the game that they were going to wind up offering. Was this decision intentional, or did it simply just run out of time? Either way, we're fine with no PvP mode, as that is done to death over a multitude of titles from other game developers in the genre. Just get the one fucking thing you're trying to do right, okay? That's all we want. So some things that we would like to see in the PvE and the co-op. Honestly, I don't even know where to begin. It's a long list, so we'll just hit the main ones. First of all, life. This is the city of brotherly love after all, so it really should look lived in. We're fighting to free our country. But free it to become what? A ghost town? Populate the damn maps. We're not asking for random civilians to pick up dropped weapons and join the fight, although that would kind of be cool, but a simple bystander screaming and running for cover as the lead starts flying would go a long way towards making us feel like we have something we're actually fighting for. This game has so much potential that it just seems wasted. Yes! Beta! We get it, it's a beta! Stop shouting! Gunplay and other controls absolutely must be more solid when the game comes to market. Maybe we were spoiled by the solid and smooth gunplay of Destiny or even the recent Division beta, and that may well be. But this game has got to tighten this most basic of mechanic down, or this will quickly become the most frustrating shooter game on any platform. Sprinting and climbing. Yeah, that needs to be fixed as well. In its current state, it is horrendously pathetic and exudes laziness or simple incompetence on the part of the developers. Guys and gals, fix it. Seriously, immediately. Your sales will tank to the bottom faster than Rick Santorum's presidential run if you don't address this issue now and urgently. This alone would improve upon the gameplay and, in our opinion, would show some semblance of care in your final product. So what's our final verdict? At a retail price of $60 not including DLC, unfortunately, we're going to have to caution you on this one. If the current state of the game does not improve measurably, then it will be a definite do not buy. Maybe once it's hit release and other reviewers start putting out feelers, then we may pick it up for a full review. Other than that, we'll pass for now and await the inevitable markdowns to come. For so many people to have put so much hard work into such a beleaguered release, it honestly brings us no joy to have to come to this conclusion. We were very much looking forward to this game being so much more than its predecessor. But in the words of our parents, you had so much potential. As usual, if this review helped you out at all, or you like what we're doing, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. You can find us on Twitter at AGN Games and also on Facebook at Analytical Gaming. Thank you for watching, and I will catch all of you post-apocalyptic wanderers on the flip side.